Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this webinar on CRM Forms 101. My name is Johannika. I'm from FullView Solutions. We're Bitrix Gold Bitrix partner in South Africa. And we're having these regular webinars to help our customers and possible new users of Bitrix to get just some of the tips and tricks behind some of the modules. Today we will be looking at the CRM forms or online forms, web forms. It's got a lot of terms, but in Bitrix the terminology is CRM forms. So we did some research and want to start this with a little bit more than just the technical terms in Bitrix24. So we did some research based on an article, and the slide I want to start with is, does this make any sense? Will this work when you drive past it? And the answer is obviously no, because would you design a novel the same way that you would design something else? So the answer is no. If we look at this definition here at the bottom, would you write a novel the same way you design an advertising billboard? Surely not, as the medium influences the design, the constraints and goals also differ. So no, this is a little bit of theory, but I thought it's good if we look at that. And we got this from a book by Jessica Enders. If you want to go read up about this, we will share the recording afterwards and some notes. Because sometimes we have to look at the why we are doing something and not just the how. So to look at that, let's look at some of the next slides. So terminology. Sometimes we get stuck in jargon and we don't know what we're talking about. So I summarized some of them from that book. That's important for us when we build a form. So there's a few role players in the story of a CRM form or online form. That's the form itself, and we often think that's all it's about. But there's the user, the person that's completing the form. There's the target audience, so the group that it's meant for. There's the form owner, the person gathering the information. And then the last two, I think, are the ones that we often forget about. And that's the user experience, or UX is the terminology for that, and the design. So I think, me included, we often forget about that when we do our forms. And then I think we've got some building blocks that we can look at when we do forms. And the first one is our, let me just get back to that slide. Is the words. Okay, so we need to ensure that we use the right words, especially going back to the terminology in terms of our target audience. I tend to fall into the trap when I ask people questions about what they need for Bitrix to use Bitrix terminology. So we need to make sure that we use the words that people are familiar with. Tell the users what we're going to do with this information. They need to trust us. So that's important that we give them those words right in the beginning so they know what we are expecting from it. Use clear language, make sure it's relevant to what you're asking them about. The next one is the layout. So we need to make sure that it's not confusing, not overwhelming with a lot of images and pictures all over. The purpose of this is for us to gather information. So group items where you can. Make sure it makes sense. Next one is the flow. This can be challenging when you've got a really long form that you need to submit, but make sure the questions, if you had to complete the form, that the order makes sense, so it doesn't jump around between your address and then your experience in the industry. So that's very, very important. And that gets to the last item, which is trust. We attended a session from Suits and Sneakers, the small business support forum, and It's all about what I'm getting out of this form when I'm completing it. So yes, sometimes it's just a matter of gathering information. I want your name, surname, email address because you are requesting a callback. But make sure in the way that you ask the questions and that you introduce the form that you gain this person's trust, because they are submitting some of their information, contact information, and you need to make sure that they trust you. So like I said, this and extra notes on this we will give you in a PDF afterwards. So think about it carefully, plan your form, don't just jump into it. And then what we've also created for you is a little checklist. So to make sure that you cover all those principles I just spoke about, we will share this. So if we run through the questions briefly, and then after we've looked at the form examples, we can circle back to this. So make sure your audience knows the purpose. Why am I completing this form? Do I understand my audience that's filling this in? Like I mentioned about terminology and words, do they know what it's about? The relevance, so I can't ask your shoe size if I'm asking you to log an inquiry on my website. The clarity, is it clear? The questions that I'm asking, does my flow make sense, and will they trust me? So this is just a checklist based on the theory and the background that we've looked at. So this is enough of the lecture part. Let's jump into Bitrix and look at examples of forms and a little bit of the tips and tricks of all the boxes that you need to check. So I've done some example forms for us. Let's look at those options. So forms can be used in so many features or aspects of your business, and I've grouped them today in terms of some use cases for employee onboarding. That's something that we use. A lot of these forms are something that we use internally as well. For job applications, they can log a support ticket for a warranty, or like with us for software. You can do the webinar registration that you guys did to register for this webinar. You can book resources or rooms if we've got a customer with a wedding venue, so you need to see which venue is available for me to book for that day without me calling in and asking what's available. And then for like our real estate customers, to log a maintenance issue, my tap's leaking or the geyser is broken, so that it all feeds into your Bitrix. You don't have separate emails or exporting from your website. Good news about having a website like in WordPress, if you don't have a website like we have that's built in Bitrix, you do get code. I'll show it to you just now that you can embed into your website, and then you still have your Bitrix form as part of your website. I'm going to open up one of these basic forms, so just a basic contact information form. And then we can look at some of the settings that you have on your form. So on the left, when you have the form, you'll see some settings and information. And on the right-hand side, you will always see like a preview or a demo of what the form is going to look like. So if we look at this, you can see I've got settings here on the left. I've got the fields that I want to add into the form, and then I have the preview on the right. Want us to run through some of these options on the left. Fields is quite obvious, is the fields that you're picking for the form, but it's very important when you add a field to make sure which CRM entity it is linked to, meaning is it going to a lead or a deal or a contact or a company, so that it saves in the right entity. And when you start with the form, you do this part that says CRM entity. I'm picking the target module in Bitrix where this information will be saved to. In this case, it's just a basic contact information form, so I will create a lead. You can pick any of these other items to say this is the destination for the information. If you're using smart processes, we'll look at one of the examples now. You can pick that, And then there's a very important thing over here. Am I allowing duplicates or not? If it's a logging of a ticket, then you would allow duplicates because I'm logging one now and I don't want it to update my ticket later on. I wanted to create a brand new one. It is often a bit of a challenge for customers to understand this or to know when to use it. So make sure that you know, am I merging the current inquiry I have or do I create another one? So that's on your CRM entities, and jumping back to the fields then, this is where I need to make sure when I add a field, if I do this, I'm adding a question to my form. You can see on the left, it has all my entities listed. So this is our demo system. So we've got a lot of smart processes. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's like a separate little database or module that you can build in your Bitrix. You determine the flow, you determine the fields, you determine the name. So you'll see when I pick this and I add this to my form, it has this gray heading here that says lead, meaning it's going to populate the field in the lead. If I remove this and I say add field and I go to compliments and I pick the description over there, can you see it now changed it to compliments? Meaning when I submit this form, it's going to be a bit of a mess because some information is going to save to leads, some's going to save to compliments, and it will warn you when you save to say some of the information is going to another CRM entity. So first start, what am I asking and where is it being saved to? Then if we look at headers and buttons, so that's the basic layout things that if we think about those building blocks, you can give your form a title, or you should give your form a title if it's just a form on a link. So I'll say test contact information. And you can see on the right, it's populating the info as it would be displayed in the actual form. And then I can also add a subtitle, please submit your info. And then this is what will be displayed to the customer. When we talk about the UX and the look and the layout, over and above the header that I can have, you can also change the design. So you can make it fit to your corporate colors. If it's blue or purple or green, you can change the background of your buttons and the color combos for any other of the design features on your form. So that's the fields. What does it look like is my header and my button and the design. And then the rest you can go have a look at. Other settings is where you name this form. So when I'm looking at my list, you saw that list when I started of all the forms. You need to make sure you name this form, else you're just going to see contact information created on, what's the date, 29 October. And you're not going to know which form is which. So make sure you name your form. On this form, I added another feature, which is a little bit of a hidden feature, but very valuable. If you have a basic contact information form like this form, but you've got it on multiple pages on your website, then you don't know which product page they were on if they just submit the contact information form. So you can, in the background, ask Bitrix to give you the page address that they were on, so you know how many inquiries you got for each product. Where do I get that? It says hidden field values over here. If I go to hidden field values, I've already added an example here for us, but I'm going to remove it and show you from start. So I'll say what information has to be populated. So in this case, I can use the source information to say where it's coming from, and you can add something that you know by default. Oh, if this form is submitted, I know it's from my website and it's not a link that's just been sent. So I'm adding those two, and then this I can now change the value. Okay, it should always say website. The customer's not picking this. Bitrix already knows at the back. And then source information is where I spoke about the website pages. So I can say, show me the page address, or those of you familiar with UTM parameters and all of that, you can use that over there, or populate the first name and the last name if I'm using personalized forms. For now, I'm going to use page address and save. If this is then submitted on my software page, it will tell me the name of that page, whatever it's named on my website. So you can see it's not being displayed over here. The user doesn't have to do it. Bitrix knows it automatically. Then I can save my form. It's warning me again. So I've got information here that is coming from a different CRM item. So let's go back to my fields and make sure I delete that one, and then I can save. Right. So now this is my form. Let's test the form and see what it looks like. To do that, you go top right of your screen. You can click Open Form, and then you can click either on copying the link, open it separate in another browser, or I just always use Open in New Tab, and then it shows me what the form is looking like. So now I can see that's just pre-populated because of my Google settings to say, remember my settings that I always complete on a form, and then I can say send. So in the back, now when that form is submitted in Bitrix, I will already have those two field values populated. Let's go to that example and I can show you. So there's my form that was completed. You can see the source already said website. I didn't do anything on the form, and this is the page that it came from. So that would be your website page. That's the example of a basic contact information form with the hidden value that you can use to populate the page address. Let's look at another example when we go to our forms, and that is the logger support ticket. We have a form like that we can give to our customers. We give them a link, say log your support ticket, and over here we will look at how I link it to an SPA. So it's not much different than the basic inquiries. So if I go to my CRM entities over here, so what's the target of where this form is being submitted to, you can see I've selected smart processes, and then out of all my processes, I've selected tickets. Expert mode, remember I have to say, am I allowing duplicates or not? And then there's different field types that I've added to this, where you can see I've got a file field where I'm asking for an attachment of your error. You can have settings here to say, is it an image, is it a document, what type it is, so it will check that when you upload it, and you can set a maximum size. So if you don't want people to upload a 20 meg file or something, you can change that limit over here, and then it will make sure that they submit the relevant documents. On this, you've got field hints as well on each of your fields. You've probably seen when you complete an online form and you hover on that, it gives you a little tip on what you have to add. So I can say, please don't submit larger than 20 megabyte. Let's just fix my typos. So can you see there at the bottom, it appeared now. So you give them a little bit more info, because Bitrix doesn't allow you to have a whole paragraph in your question. You keep it short, and then you give the extra information here at the bottom that you need. Also, you have required fields. When I have a customer logging a ticket, I need to know what type of ticket it is or what priority it is. I can make that compulsory. I want to communicate with you, so I need to know your email address, else I can't respond on your ticket or even send you auto response. And that's where I use the required field. If it is a list field, like the ticket types we have over here, you can also have the customers selecting multiple options if your field is set up like that, and set a default value that it always populates with. That's just some more settings here at the back. Let's look at an example, and you can see playing around. I added the wrong fields to not show to tickets. So let's go to my CRM entity and make sure I change it back to tickets. There we are. Save. So Bitrix does warn you, because we all get a bit busy and forget about what we're busy with. So I've saved it, and I'm going to open the form, and we can look at what it looks like when I've got drop downs and files. So that's the same on top there. Priority level, they can pick a priority level, ticket type. You can see, like most web forms, if it's got that little red asterisk, you know it's a compulsory field. And then I can select my field, my form, or my document that I would want to upload. There's my document, and I can't save because it's saying I need your email address. I'll add my email address, and now I can submit. I'm not going to look at the results now again for the purpose of time, but the same thing will happen now. My ticket will be created with all of the information that I've submitted. Let's look at our other examples. We've got the resource booking. Like I said, we've got a customer with a wedding venue. If you have a conference facility, or you can even use people's diaries and set it up over here as resources. So to find the resources, I'll just show you briefly, but we will also share a link with you on where you find all the settings about bookings. So then you can see I've got two different venues over here. I have a chapel, and I've got a banquet hall, or whatever you would want to call it. So when I set up my form, if we go to resource booking over here, it's pretty simple as long as I've done my homework to set up the different resources, to pick which resource I need to see availability for. If you create your form and you pick the option to say you're doing a resource booking form, I can click on edit over here, and it's going to ask me what are the resources I want to use. Click on change resource, and then you can see I've already selected chapel and room 5. If I do this and I say select, it will show me all the options for my resources that I have available, and I can pick whichever other resource I would want to use. The rest of the fields, the same. I need to pick what is my CRM entity. Am I creating duplicates or not? I'm going to save this, and we can look at an example of the resource bookings, and then also the way it reflects in your Bitrix. It's very important that you name them correctly. You can set up times that it's available. So if it is, for instance, a conference room, you can say it's only available from 8 to 5. If it is an overnight chalet for somewhere, you can make it from a 24 hours availability, whichever is the way your business functions. So let's look at an example of what the form looks like. I just want to close up some windows for us. So let's go to open the form. Like I said, you can copy the link. If you want to share this specific example to somebody on a WhatsApp and say, please complete our booking form, it's very handy to use the link. But for this example, let's open it in a new tab. There's my basic contact info, and then I can say what resource do I want to select. I want to select the chapel, and then it will show me which days I have availability at what time. So what I have done for this exercise, I've pre-booked some of the days so we can see it's not available. So the rest, I can see it's available all days, every day. If I go to October the 31st, which I've booked out the chapel and I've even booked out the banquet, you can see there's no available spots. Let's go to a day where there's an available spot. It's said to not be available on weekends. If I go to Monday the 1st, I've got times available again, so I can book it for 3 o'clock and submit my form. Like I said, we'll send you a link about the bookings, because that's a whole nother feature which is brilliant, because it will send me a WhatsApp about my booking that's been done. It can send me a reminder to say, remember, your appointment is booked for a specific day. That's the resource booking form. Let's go to one of our other examples. I think this is one that people often forget about, that you can use Bitrix for that. We use it ourselves. If you have a vacancy, you build a smart process. If you're on the professional version, where I call it job applications, whatever it is in my business, and then you can build a form to capture info. And over here, you can pay attention to the fact that the layout is important. I've got lots of information I want to ask. Don't put it all on one screen where they need to scroll down and down and down to find all the questions. You can split it into different pages. Page 1 has got this information. Page 3, you can move it around. Split the page in terms of where you would want the splits to be. Easy as this. You drag and drop and you move it around. Add questions, same way, doing this. And if I say add separator over here, this is where it will ask me, do I want to add another page? Do I want to add a title to a little subsection, or do I want to add a line? For now, we're just going to focus on the different pages. I'm going to save this. And then we'll look at the example. Advertising your vacancy. I open up, I send them the link directly to the form to open up the form. And then this is what it would look like with multiple pages. There's page 1. I add my details. ID, you can see these fields are all compulsory, because how should I contact you and know who you are if I don't have your information? And then I go next, and I've got page 2, etc., etc. So now I can go through all of the pages. This is where I have a drop down. Next, last page, country of birth, and position applying for admin. And there you are. They've done your job application. You don't have emails and CVs all over the place. You have your list of all your applications to work with. Then let's look at another type. And that is the company information form. So all of these forms I'm showing you, we use internally in FullView, and that's why I like to share what makes my life easier. When we have onboarding of a new customer, not only a new employee, a new customer, so you will know that you would have received a link to populate the information like your VAT number, company registration, and then the customer submits, and they are now a customer on your Bitrix. Makes that process much easier than sending emails up and down. Same example, so you can see these are my documents that I'm submitting, and I need to pick my CRM entity. So that's just some examples. The last thing I want to show you is what you saw on when I completed the form is sometimes it had the information pre-populated, sometimes not. And that is your choice. So if I go to my fields and you see that little icon over there, and I click on edit, it says enable auto complete. That means if there's cookies and stuff in your browser that it knows this is your email address and your phone number you always use, it will populate automatically. If I don't select that, it won't pop up automatically for me. That's your tip in terms of that. Let's just recap in terms of our checklist that we did. So we need to have the fields with the right words to explain what we're asking. If the question is too long in Bitrix, you can use your field hint. If we look at the header and button, the purpose, I need to tell the customer why are you submitting this information, why should they trust you to submit it to you. We've got the order of the fields in terms of the flow, where we can move them and also create pages like I showed you in the job application form. It's very important to pick our entity in terms of where it's saving to, and then we can do some design settings in terms of colors and different look and feels. If I do this, you can see the form changes on the right. But you can play around with it, you can't break it. Create a test form and see how it works for you. Last thing we need to look at is just some technical things again in our other settings. It's a bit hidden, but it's very important. So your form name over here, but if you go to form features over here, there's important stuff that you need to change. If I go to the gear, there's what will the customer see as the form name. Over here you can say it says recruitment application form, or it will say logger support ticket. So it needs to make sense for them in terms of the page that they would see. So that is what you would do on your page settings. You'll name it over here and you'll name it over there. If you are sending this link to someone via WhatsApp or an email, then, well, especially WhatsApp. So if you receive a link, you see that little preview image that people will see before they click on the link. And that is what this is for. Make sure you give them some context in terms of the link, in terms of the page, the form name over here at the bottom. And then you've got some features over here to help you. You can use Copilot, which is the AI in Bitrix, to generate an image for you that is that fits your form feature. Or I like to use Unsplash, which is a free, royalty-free stock images that you can get. So I can search for the word business. It will give me quite a few images that I can pick. So right, I want that, and I will save, and it will change from what I had to that preview for me. Save. And then when I open that link in something like, when I post it in something like LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, that is my preview image that would be displayed. That's a whole lot to remember. So the webinar is recorded. We will share a PDF with you afterwards with the tips and tricks that I shared, and also some of the information from that book. And then, yes, we are available if you need some help or guidance in building a complicated form. Please shout and we are there to help. Any questions at this moment that you can pop in the FAQs, in the chat, and then we can address them if there's anything that is beneficial for everybody else. Looks like we're good. Thank you everybody for joining. Make sure you listen to the recording if you get stuck with building your forms. Take care.